We want to talk about some ways to transition into a blended family. Um, just some ways that will help prevent some problems that may occur. So, the first way is don't assume. Don't assume you know everything about marriage and parenting. Just because you have been married before, it is different in a blended family because you have a whole different set of people involved. And what may have worked in your previous marriage might not work in this marriage. So you can't assume that you know everything. So when a problem arises, it's really helpful to talk with someone, especially someone else that's in a blended family where it's working. So don't let your pride get the best of you. Ask for help. The second thing is prioritize. You need to make sure that you put your marriage at the top. You have to have time to strengthen your marriage first. When the children see that you are strengthened and you are on one accord, it will make it easier for them to blend together as a family. But the marriage has to be the first priority. Next, make sure that you and your future spouse are on the same page about parenting. So, you need to discuss how you're going to rear your children. You may already have a process that you've used in a previous marriage. Remember, I said that may not work in this marriage. So you and your spouse need to be on the same page when it comes to discipline. Even if it is, I will discipline my kids, you discipline your kids, but you have to be on the same page so that the children will be receiving the same message from both parents.
And I want to share an example of one that I have from my past in working with a family, and actually was my former student. But it was difficult for the parents because, as you just said, they were not on the same page. And one of the parents, well, the actual biological parent, felt that the new parent, in this case her spouse, her new spouse, her husband, he was just being difficult to her child. And the issue was not so much that they didn't agree, was they did it openly in front of the child. And so what the child did, the child learned how to manipulate the situation so that he didn't have to listen to his new dad. And so she was expressing her concern, and we had to kind of work through that in terms of they need to come together and get on the same page before they present their case to him, because he learned how to manipulate them in order to get what he wanted, and also to not be disciplined. So we suggest that you as parents, you come together, and as Chinja was saying a few moments ago, whatever the process is going to be for your family, but you do this before you present this before the children or come before the children, because they will see the cracks in the wall, and they will try to manipulate their way through them if you allow them.
And in some cases, that will destroy the marriage because the couple is not willing to go against their child.
Right. They feel as if I have to overcompensate because this is my child and I'm in a new marriage. And that, as you said, that's not really prioritizing or taking into account that you want to be on the same page with your spouse first and foremost.
So next is get to know your stepchildren and work to form emotional bonds. We know that a lot of times in blended families, you don't see your, you know, your spouse's kids, except maybe on holidays or every other weekend. So you have not had a chance to build that emotional bond. But you, as a step parent, you don't have to wait for a special event or a holiday. You can call them, you can be in touch with them throughout the week to find out how things are going, find out what they're having issues with. They want to know that you care about them as a person. So it's really important that you get involved with your stepchildren to learn what's important to them so that you can create that emotional bond. Next is be able to create weekly routines and new traditions. You may not be able to do Christmas like you used to do it before, but this is your opportunity with the input of the children to come up with some new traditions that will work for your family. It might be, example, at Christmas, that you don't get to see them on Christmas Day, but you get to see them the next week. So you can plan a week of activities that would be still fun for everybody, that will create that same Christmas atmosphere. Looking at some others, allow individualities, but don't label your children or your stepchildren. That is very important. We are all individuals. We don't all fit in the same box. Just because we might all be 12 doesn't mean we will like all the same things. So be careful with how you label your children, because each is unique in their own way. That's why it's important to form that emotional bond with each child so that everybody will feel that they are a part of the family. Don't single out a specific child. For instance, a child that makes honor roll. Yes, it's great to give them praise, but at the same time, make sure that you let your other children know that you're proud of their accomplishments as well. Make sure you try. When it comes to the former spouses, try to form a partnership. Just because the marriage did not go well does not mean that you cannot have a partnership. The partnership is because everybody wants what's best for the children. And when you're constantly, in disagreements with each other, then the kids are feeling that they don't have a say, or that they are torn and their loyalties are torn between the two parents. So it's important to try to form a partnership with your ex or former spouses.
And I wanted to add in there, for you talked about the individuality, and as adults, we acknowledge that we're different. Nobody's like me, I'm unique. We can recognize and acknowledge that. But as you pointed out with the children, before we go any further, that's so true. And everybody, adult or child, we want to know that there's validation for who we are and that we're appreciated. And so acknowledging that just because you have two kids in the home, or three or four, that they're not all the same, understanding that everybody brings something special or different to the table, acknowledging that fact oftentimes it does create an environment of acceptance because they realize, well, you got to know who I am. You paid attention to who I am and what I like and don't like. And oftentimes from that you get the results that you receive are positive because they're a little more apt to listen to you and
Yes.
and to follow your instructions. So just taking that time to give them some sense of validation and the fact that they feel appreciated as a human being goes a long way.
That's exactly right. And to go along with that is that open communication. It is imperative that your kids see that they can come to you. A lot of times, parents will get to say what they need to say, but it's not a two-way street. So it's real important that your kids feel like they can come to you and let you know what's going on with them, and not only let you know what's going on, but that you hear them, that you have empathy, that you understand, and that you're willing to work with them to come up with a solution. And that cannot happen if there's not open communication. And once there is open communication, then your kids feel like they are a part of that process that you talked about earlier, being a part of the process. Next, consider Christian counseling. And we touched on this a little bit earlier. If you feel that you need some help in getting your blended family on stable ground, it's okay. A lot of times it just takes that outside person that can be objective. A lot of times we are not objective and we feel that our way is the right way. But sometimes your way isn't necessarily the best way. So we encourage Christian counseling for blended families. And the last thing is give yourself grace. God gives us grace and new mercies every day. So we can't allow, a situation to get the best of us. No one is perfect. We will make mistakes. Your new spouse will make mistakes. Your kids will make mistakes. But we can forgive each other and move on. A mistake does not necessarily destroy a relationship. Mistakes open that door for us to grow together, to grow stronger. So if at first, everybody is not on the same page, it takes time. So it's important that you give yourself grace, that you learn from your mistakes, and then you're able to move forward. So it may not be easy at first, but the more you work with your family, the more you communicate with your family, the better you will be able to mix together, and you'll be able to make that cake that everybody will be able to enjoy. So we would like to discuss a few scriptures with you that will add to the success of your blended family. Stanley?
Okay. And to share some of these with you, she just talked about a good segue, talking about making mistakes, and we all do. And that's something that I want you to keep at the forefront of your mind. We all do. There's no picture perfect individual. There's no perfect marriage. There's no perfect blended family. Everyone makes mistakes, but we learn from them. We hopefully learn from them so that we don't continue to repeat them, and therefore we can grow as a result of learning from them. And that first scripture, Proverbs 24:3, by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. By wisdom a house is built. So we want to build a house, and you want to be wise. You don't start building a house by simply building the roof first. We understand that a house is built simply by creating the foundation. You create the foundation first, and you want to put it on a firm, a steady foundation if you want your house to last. And as it said, a house that's built on sand isn't going to last. You want to on a solid foundation. So with that, there's a process of building a house. And so in building that house, by using that wisdom to build the house, you're building something that's going to last. If you're wise, and like I said, don't just start with the top first. And through understanding, it is established. By getting that understanding of the process, then that home is built and is established, and it's a house that is not easily shaken. So you want to take that process and understand, by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. And Proverbs 4:7 says, basically, in paraphrase, in all thy getting, get some understanding. So this is a part of getting understanding, this podcast. So you have more tools in your tool belt to use in your blended family. So having this knowledge, and not only this, but also incorporating, as I mentioned earlier, don't forget the factor of incorporating God into that family unit. He is able to do the impossible, which means he can do anything. Those difficult challenges you have in front of you, he's able to bring those challenges to pass, meaning he's able to help you overcome them. Then another one is, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Isaiah 43:18. Forget those former things. Now, this marriage is not that former marriage. This spouse, as you would acknowledge, is not your former spouse. So you have a situation in front of you, whereas hopefully you learned from your past. Therefore, when you learn from that, you said, I'm not going to take these old issues into my new marriage, because it talked about old wine being new wine being put in an old vat. It doesn't work, because guess what? It's going to seep out. It's not going to fulfill its purpose. So we say that to say, it says, I am doing a new thing. You're in a new marriage, a new family. So with that, if you leave the old behind, leave the past behind, leave the past in the past, and realize that now you're going to have to work to reestablish a new family unit. He said he's doing a new thing, but you have to trust the process. Trust the process, even though it doesn't look great all the time, it doesn't feel great. He says, forget those old things. I'm doing a new thing now. And lastly, Romans 14:19, let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. So we say, sometimes one has to, as she touched upon it earlier, you got to swallow your pride. When you say, okay, this is the way I used to do it, or this is just not feeling good to my flesh. Let us therefore make every effort. Sometimes that means we have to hold our peace. Sometimes that means we have to compromise for the best of the relationship, which you're talking about the marriage, putting that first, as well as for the family, which means incorporating those children, which sometimes simply means I don't get my way. So let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace. Yes, yes, yes. And our flesh doesn't always like that feeling. But if we take this scripture and say, what am I doing? How am I responding? How am I trying to create an atmosphere of peace in my home? How do I factor into that? That's the question we ask, that you ask yourselves individually. And then hopefully you answer yourself as well. So, and be honest with yourself, real talk, be honest with yourself. And it said to mutual edification. So we want to know how is that going to play into you building each other up edifying each other, lifting each other up. So you want to make every effort to create that kind of environment. And if in that kind of environment, the atmosphere should be saturated, that it overflows, not just between you and your spouse, but into your family unit and your children. Because if they see that working with you all, then even though if the enemy tries to rear his head, then they will see that that's not going to work here, because in this environment, my parents are working to make sure that everything is done according to God's word. And then I can see how they lift each other up, which goes with what Tinger was saying. When we empathize and walk in our children's shoes and our spouse's shoes, then we can sometimes see things a little differently through a different lens, which also would say, if I was wearing those shoes, I wouldn't want necessarily to be spoken to that way, or I wouldn't want to be treated that way, or I can understand why this particular person feels that way. And sometimes it might not be, as Tinger said earlier, that you're wrong. It's not always about right and wrong, but sometimes it's about what's doing best. So let us make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. We want to lift each other up. Little contact information. So if we can further assist you, we're here at Word Tabernacle, and our assisting you does not necessarily mean we only assist members of Word Tabernacle Church. We assist people from the community. We actually work with people throughout the country. Because of social media, we're able to do that through various platforms. So we are here to help, as she mentioned from our introduction. And we also, it's not just the two of us, we have a team of counselors who are willing to work with you as well. So we just want you to know that blended families, as challenging as they can be, and regardless of what you may have heard, they can be successful. But we want to make sure as well that you have the tools in your tool belt, in your toolbox, to be able to pull out and say,
Yes.
when I need something, I've got the right tool to make sure that I accomplish the task at hand. So how does it make you feel when you are successful in completing a task? The same thing can be with your blended families.
So we thank you for joining us for the Counseling Connections podcast. And if you need any additional information, please do not hesitate to call us. You will see our contact information on the screen, but please feel free to let us know if it's anything that we can do to assist you.
Thank you. Thank you. We ask that you all just have a great day. And as she said, we're available. Real Talk with the Counselors Connection. Be blessed.